structures and reducing minion hit points to 1. Make use of the curse to push out your lanes and beyond to victory.
We are back in a tied series between Team Freedom and B-Step. Winner of this moves on and has to play versus Superstars later today even, so not much of a break, and neither team wants this to go all the way to Game 5.
No, you know, for the first time at HGC, we have, you know, the back-to-back series for these teams outside of major tournament play, and it has a lot to do with, you know, momentum and more importantly, just morale of the squad. How's everybody feeling? Are you guys on top of your game? So yeah, it ain't the least amount of games that these teams can play is going to benefit them in all ways.
Cawthon, you know both of these teams well. Obviously, you've played versus them a lot, especially B-Step. Do you feel like B-Step and their experience in the scene makes it better for them that they're able to carry that momentum forward, not get drained if they are the ones to have to play in the second series? Or how do you think it will affect either of these teams?
I think anything having to do with this playoff high-pressure format, B-Step is going to have an edge. I mean, wily veterans. For Freedom, they're a new group. I mean, you never know if the pressure's getting to them or not. There hasn't been any signs of somebody really falling apart like we've seen at some other tournaments. With B-Step, I mean, I think we've seen them take chances. I think what we just saw out of B-Step was something attuned to their wily veteran state where they wanted to bait us a little bit, bait other teams into thinking this was new B-Step that embraces macro, but that was a very uninspired performance with no pressure in the macro game.
Uninspired is a great word to describe that. When we know we're going to Sky Temple for the next game, B-Step has chosen Battleground pick so that they could pick Sky. This is also a Battleground that's sometimes picked by Team Freedom. More of a team fight possibilities along the temples, but it's still a large Battleground, so we still could see some possible globals from either team.
Yeah, globals are relevant, but not as game-changing on Sky, so we'll see how much emphasis gets put into that. It is very weird with these two teams specifically when looking at maps because they both kind of have their one go-to, and then all the rest are kind of free reign, right? And so it is hard to gauge in either way. Does Sky Temple give the advantage? I don't think so. It's the best team fighting team probably going to pull ahead here.
Muradin ban again from Team Freedom. This is the second time they have banned Muradin versus B-Step.
Calf.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are targeting in on that 2015 calf also. Muradin, a favorite hero of his for a long time. I can only assume these bans are directed at his comforts right now. Not a very common ban, Muradin, in the first round.
So for a first pick for Freedom, what do you feel like stands out? Greymane, is that an insta-lock? Is that something you need to have happen? Do you commit to a global? What are your thought process?
My thought would be Dahaka here is the safest pick that doesn't commit you too hard to one strategy. It's hard to really counter Dahaka, whereas picking another global like Falstad or Abathur is definitely open to some counter picks. I would expect to see the Dahaka here, but let's see what direction they take it.
Especially because B-Step has been so focused, again, on having Dahaka. And if you take Dahaka and B-Step feels like they have to get a global, we just saw them play Falstad. It was a different Falstad player even, and it still was not the most compelling performance for a team. They seem like Dahaka works a lot better for the style of B-Step to be able to have K1 Pro playing that. But Dahaka wasn't picked. Freedom wanted to get Zeratul for Insomnia, so B-Step will get Dahaka.
He's got the mouth behind it. Nice follow-up. Just strong support in general. Removes any kind of wombo combo between Malfurion and Zeratul as well.
Interested to see what direction Freedom goes now. If they try to lock in the Falstad on the 2-3, knowing that the Zeratul is one of the best counters to Falstad, especially with an Abathur on top of them. Now that they've secured it as the first pick, it's much safer for them to grab a Falstad on the 2-3 if that's what they wanted. Because the first pick Zeratul, little odd. It makes me think they're planning something off of that.
It used to be kind of a thing, but it died once the macro game overtook Heroes of the Storm. Zeratul is a first pick on Sky Temple. Hasn't been around in a while.
Freedom did it the last time they played Sky, but they were second pick, and they did do the same thing, Zeratul Falstad. So they'll just add an Uther to that.
Yeah, it makes sense setting up that Falstad as a safe pick later without being harassed by the potential Zera Abba.
They got themselves the Uther on top of it. Not surprising with the Malfurion already picked up. Fear of the support choke into the secondary ban phase. So knowing again, the first 5 picks, are there any secondary bans that just stand out as like a must for either one of these teams, or is just more of, you know, this is a bit of annoying here, you know?
The main healers are off the board. Wow, the Chen hover, that's a little odd. At this point, each side has their healer and their global play locked down, so they haven't really committed to a style on either side. Then we're going to see with the next picks whether they're committing more to like a team fight style, which is pretty good on Sky Temple. I really would be surprised to see another like heavy macro play style out of either of these teams now, like committing to an additional Abathur or Zagara when they each have a global already. I would find pretty surprising.
I wonder if Team Freedom is going to continue down what they have already started with trying to target King Caffeine.
Yeah, that is a good question. And, you know, I think it's one of those. I think this game would be a nice success or nice sign if they are successful here. They'll probably hold it as like, you know, crippling King Caffeine is a viable strategy for us. But if not, probably back away. And, you know, no longer stick to that. I can say I didn't think Caff as my go-to for a person to try and focus on when it came to a hero pool, but it's also, again, who else
would you?
APM's the only one.
Yeah, but APM has been focused before, and it has not worked out for teams. It's been a while, though. It does seem like Caff might be the best target, but that's not even... They're okay with just taking away his Muradin. Now they're switching to the backline of B-Step, some favored backliners, and Lunara is one of them.
There's always the possibility of the Greymane Abathur. One thing I'd like to look for from Freedom's side is potential Ragnaros Ledrian. This guy, I mean, the passive useful on this map for eating up temple shots also has the soft, well, hard wombo in this case with the other heroes they have. If they committed to like Avoid Prison, Uther D Shield, or D Storm, and Rag ult, I mean, you can even throw a Hinterland in if they wanted to be super crazy.
Whoa, whoa.
Not that I would recommend it. I mean, they could have a wombo on their hands.
They could. They very much could. I do not totally hate the idea of that, especially like with the Zeratul setup that you were talking about. With Uther, normally it does feel a little, you know, kind of meh whenever your Divine Shield targets don't have enough sustained DPS to really kind of take off. And, you know, Ragnaros, maybe Zeratul, Falstad's the closest thing to that, and Falstad is not your #1 D Shield target. But the Greymane Tyrael back here for B-Step after what was a... I think we use the term not inspiring is what we're sticking with.
Uninspiring.
Uninspiring performance there from them last game.
Yeah, I think a comp based around team fights is it's much more what B-Step excels in. And getting the Tyrael here, they're confident in that pick, picking it into a Zeratul, which is a good counter in general to the Sanctification. Just pop the VP and then wombo after he uses Sanct. Looks like they want to put some priority on controlling the boss with the Holy Ground as well.
It's just, though I do agree, directing towards a teamfight composition for B-Step, committing with that last Tyrael Greymane has kind of solidified that that's where they're going to go. But last game, there was not a single moment where Greymane was in a Sanctification.
I think that that might be who is playing what. I think we're gonna see McIntyre back on Greymane.
Okay, okay. So we'll see that essentially that was the role swap, or not the role swap, hero
the roster
swap.
Or what? Yeah, definitely not a roster swap.
The hero swap that they felt comfortable with. So if they return to that, you're arguing that you think that it will get better because, again, it wasn't that B-Step committed to a macro game and they didn't macro. It was B-Step committed to a half macro, half team fight, and they decided to do neither. It was just kind of, they were playing the video game. I mean, they didn't even gain a tribute.
The synergy wasn't there, definitely, between the two. But switching it over, putting McIntyre, who I believe makes a lot of the calls for the team, allows him to say when he has found a target that Tyrael can dive in alongside, drop the Sanctification for him and allow him to go. K1 Pro, back to playing Dahaka instead of Falstad. It's so hard when you have been playing these melee beefier heroes to then try to switch back and play something like a Falstad, regardless of if you're trying to play at yet another global for the team. So yes, I think they're going to switch back to heroes that everyone feels more comfortable with, including Medivh.
The Immortal Greymane, it is here.
How many shields do you need, Greymane? Between the portal of Medivh, the Force of Will, Tyrael shields, and Sanctification, he's going to be pretty well off.
Yeah, I think, like you just said, they were unwilling to commit to one playstyle or another. That Medivh forces them, they're going in, and they're getting shielded, the Greymaine's diving. There's going to be no indecision here as they have no other options.
So guys, we've got our 2 compositions. Do you have a favorite? We'll start with you, Cawthon.
I like B-Steps. I think committing back to the team fight, they still have a little bit of the macro presence with the Dahaka and the Medivh, but their main focus is going to be deep flanks, the Dahaka digs, going in hard with the portal, shields on the Greymane. It plays more to their style.
I agree. Not only when it comes to the comp and going to their playstyle, I think the Medivh was maybe a risk they don't have to tank, but it only solidifies that they can't not commit. They straight up go, well, we picked Medivh, so let's battle. And I think that'll help.
What do you think of what Team Freedom's going to have to do? Because we didn't really address the ETC. Yes, they have Li Ming once again, but is ETC now going to have to be a counter global? Is there any possibilities of having Mosh Pit for him here?
I would expect to see a Mosh Pit with them already having the global. I mean, it makes sense that B-Step's already committed to a team fight.
They got themselves an Uther. I would be disappointed if we don't have a Mosh Pit. If that is not a Divine Shield Mosh Pit, I will be one sad Dreadnought today.
Same.
All right, well, don't make these guys sad, okay? Okay, Team Freedom, let's get into the game. The teams are tied as we head into Sky Temple for Game 3.
That was actually the first thought that came to my head when I saw the rework onto Uther. Beyond
Really?
everybody gets armor, I go, Divine Shield Mosh Pits, man. It's back. You know, sadly, ETC's seen some adjustments, but at the time, he was top of the meta. I was ready for it. The argument for the stage dive, though, very much would be, again, to over-exaggerate global pressure, be able to outman B-Step in that sense, but it's just not a map that you get enough out of that I would like to see that.
Yeah, the thing is, if you have ETC with stage dive, he can sit on a point, and he's a tankier option than having Falstad sit on the point, right?
Yeah.
Falstad can stay with the rest of the team. Zeratul to shark around still, whereas Falstad, it's scarier. We've seen so many Falstad picks from several teams throughout Part 2. When you even look statistically at Dahaka versus Falstad, in Part 1, it was all about Falstad. Falstad had a very high win rate. But now, Dahaka and Falstad are played an even amount. Only 2 games separated these two. Dahaka played 2 games more, and yet Dahaka statistically seems like the better global option for North America. And maybe it just is that he has more sustainability.
Yeah, because the earlier version of Dahaka that you're talking to is before he received his crazy buff, correct? Or are you going even after that point? You know, before he got the 3rd health bar. He's always had 2.
Right.
It just, before he got his buff before, 100% effectiveness.
Yeah, I'm not sure when that came in, if that was before Part 1 or in the middle of Part 1.
It's just, it makes a lot of sense to me. Just anytime you have a hero with high health bars is going to be more forgiving if they're an isolated laner for the global. You know, it's something that we saw a lot back in the day, even with like things like Brightwing, more traditional globals, with especially like way back in promote meta. It's just, if you didn't have the survivability, it's almost inevitable that your solo laner will end up getting picked. The difference, the reason Brightwing was so good is actually because not only Ice Block, she had double blink heal that she could get to minions and teleport out. Falsta's got 1 barrel roll, and that thing is easily interrupted.
Yeah, especially, well, it's interrupted, right? And you can interrupt even Fly going away. We saw it trying to interrupt Dahaka when he brush talks, but just having so many different health bars, even the damage that K1 Pro can put out with Dahaka, the Dark Swarm there too, has a burrow for survivability. Both teams are keeping these globals in the bottom lane. We're starting to trade out on the temples. B-Step doing something that we have recognized B-Step for doing for quite a while on Sky Temple, and that's focus on the top temple for the first phase.
Yeah, put more emphasis into the top lane. I'd like to see if they can now commit that towards bottom. It's often, you know, a bit of a desire left here for me on Sky Temple in North America to see that heavy commitment or at least some form of a power play now that we've managed to make it past the first shrine phase. It was near instant, which means at 4 minutes and 30, we can expect the secondary shrine phase to come up, and it's that 4-minute mark or the 3:30 when a team, I would like to see specifically B-Step, try and, you know, just all in on bottom, take out that front wall.
B-Step have made the rotation to try to do that. Faster movements to get their giants, but sometimes they follow this up going straight to their bruisers and trying to hard push with those bruisers to get the top floors.
That actually was one of the first strategies in North America on Sky Temple. The first one was, well, obviously once we figured out that it always spawns bottom, was the night camp. And the next rotation was, what if we giants first and then all in? You know, it got crazy for a while, but those have kind of been this step 1 and step 2. Rarely was it, what if we kept this early in Siege, especially with giants. If anybody did it, was knights, and only if you didn't have a global advantage.
Since B-Step got this earlier, they're even using regrowth to heal up the Giants as much as they can for the siege. But they wanted to make sure they also could keep members in every other lane, keeping Dahaka top. And this is the second time we've seen Adrian be the middle laner for the team. That may change once he gets 7 so that he can start rotating around and trying to get his Master's touch stacks. But this enables Team Freedom, since they cleaned up the Giants so fast for B-Step, to try to do the same with theirs.
But the difference between the two is going to be Freedom is going to baby them. They're going to move in, and with 2 members of B-Step now on that Knights, or at least Greyman's still sticking to it, this is a very defenseless front wall. Tyrael's still waiting in the side. They expected this. You can see B-Step expected this rotation, just not to be as fast nor as effective.
Medivh hasn't gotten Master's touch yet. Now he's gotten it, but that was a few arcane rifts missed that he could have been getting stacks with that. Now, Force of Will keeping King Caffeine healthy. This has been cleared out fairly well. There's still a tower standing to soak up shots, as well as the well for re-engagements once we have this temple activating now.
But we've got ourselves a global on top, a small advantage for Team Freedom, and B-Step's comp doesn't really team fight that well up until 10. It's skirmishes, all right? When I say that, I mean not this very rigid dance, what is eventually going to be a team fight, but more this, you know, oh, I caught somebody in rotation, these 2v2s that may happen at times. So I expect Freedom to be a bit more aggressive on this. Even how late they waited, it feels like way too late considering they have a Zeratul Uther and a Li Ming. You know, just be hyphy. One reset wins you so much here on bottom.
No Echo Paddle for ETC. Power slid out, but a route to catch him. Dahaka's there too. Can he get the drag? Does drag, but it's not ETC. Instead, Collusion be the first to fall. Will give heals to the team, but still Zugrak's fairly low. These body blocks have been great, and they can continue because there's a portal there too. Once again, these roots from APM nearly net them a second kill. B-Step will lay claim to this temple.
They will end up claiming it, but Falstad's doing his own thing up on top. He's getting at least a countermeasure for Freedom after the loss of their Uther, as he's been pushing away. That's why they have an experience advantage. What does B-Step do, though? Now that they know that they've got a lot of resources still coming in on bottom, I wanted to know if they were going to try and force the rest of that fort, but they decide Freedom's too close to 10.
So there's no Echo Paddle for ETC. Instead, getting Pinball Wizard for more damage from his face mount makes us think even more so that this is, there it is, Mosh Pit. But Divine Storm.
Divine Storm Mosh Pit.
Lock him down, knock him out.
All right, so the one major counter argument to why you would not Divine Shield this game is just based on the fact that every other Divine Shield target just sucks. Divine Shielded Li Ming, okay, so why I said it in draft 2, but like why when you have a D shield you don't want your hero to be cooldown dependent is unless you can see their cooldowns exactly, you have no idea whether or not your Divine Shield is going to be effective, which is always why sustained DPS is more reliable. Because if I Divine Shield you and you're invulnerable for insert any amount of seconds, it's going to be that much better unless somehow you cycled your cooldowns, you got low on HP for a cooldown hero, then you got D-shielded, it came back up. Like, it's just way more unreliable here. And so Li Ming is one of those. Falstad isn't the best sustained DPS. Zeratul cycles with cooldowns as well. All of them are terrible, except for the Falstad, and even then, he's not high enough HP always for you to really kind of justify giving that to him. So that is the only reason I can see you not moving into it. That being said, you have a Zeratul set up with Void Prison, you've got control out of, you know, Gust for boss control, you have already global to match your opponent. I would have taken Divine Storm or Divine Shield all day.
Well, there aren't a lot of possibilities of being able to stop. Oh, nice Divine Storm. Oh no, this is Medivh. He gets through the portal in time thanks to his Force of Will too. That would have been disastrous. He did not have his stacks done. What I was saying is, though, there weren't a lot of possibilities for stopping a mosh pit. So Polybomb.
Yeah.
Just to make sure.
Just to make sure. Making, you know, maybe that Divine Storm that much more questionable now that there's a legitimate interrupt. We have to keep in mind, another reason. Okay, so let's say you don't go Divine Shield in this game.
Yeah.
100. Oh, man, this is so hard. I would say you cleanse. If you know you're going Mosh, you take cleanse just for that 1 second because Mosh needs something. It needs at least one thing to make it semi-valuable, and it's a really impactful heroic. But if it gets instantly interrupted with a Polybomb, It is just, it's not, you know, it sounds like you're throwing a party. You're literally putting up a mosh pit, but it's not nearly as exciting as it seems.
The party got canceled. The principal was there. It wasn't very cool. The principal is Medivh. Principal Medivh seems right. Here we go. Okay.
Not as much as we would want. But again, that shows like that right there was the void setup I was talking about. If you're going to give me a void mosh pit setup of any kind, at least give me cleanse for that type of situation or the divine shield.
Zugreg's been caught. McIntyre wants to dive in on this. Has somewhat. Here comes Dahaka. Zugreg catches 3 in the mosh pit, and he's just blown up by a Twilight Dream.
Yeah, gonna silence that literally and just slay Freedom really quick, putting to doubt any, you know, or diminishing any doubt. Excuse me, words are hard today.
What's better than silencing a mosh pit, a rocks party? Yeah. You know. This guy knows what I'm talking about.
This guy. Oh man, Boss is being started though for B-Step with their recent success in that team fight. They've got all 3 forts down. They've got a fort advantage over Freedom. They've got themselves half the level. It's not too big of a lead to where it's looking grim for Freedom, but B-Step has another dominant early start to a game after what was such a absurdly different, you know, such heavy contrast in game 2.
I'm telling you, it's who's playing what for B-Step. Maybe it was a type of composition that they had practiced before, but with the addition of a certain hero, whichever hero that was, it forced a change up maybe in the way that somebody didn't have the practice on the right heroes. But either way, it's not done yet. It is Sky Temple, so we know that a team's going to get to the late game and then try to make the next boss force, and that's where we will know the game will end.
At least in North America.
Yeah, NA Sky Temple.
It doesn't have to work that way. Sky Temple doesn't force you to, but yeah, we found a way to make that a thing here in NA. We like exciting moments, and it turns out throat pits are a fine place to build those.
So let's take stock, take inventory of what each team has. B-Step's about to get 16. They also have a nice mercenary push here in the top lane, and they have 1 fort ahead of Team Freedom. B-Step are trying to use this time exactly. The minute they get 16, they have the bruisers hitting the top wall here, just trying to open up more, take out some structures so that when the next temple phase starts, they can get more out of it, especially if there is a top temple again.
Zeritzel's kind of just lurking in for that side soak. They're so desperate for the 16 Freedom, and the 3-man defense squad should be able to hold off the keep. It's only a night camp and only 16 talents here, but once we have these new shrines up in 20 seconds, top gets a keep now for B-Step after that siege.
Insomnia's been spotted out, goes in for a void.
That was that. That's why I was so surprised. Oh man, K1 Pro taking a lot of damage. Divine Storm, they still get the pick. They drop a mosh pit on a solo Tyrael, and he goes down. That seems so just nothing to come of it for so long, and then somehow Freedom gets the picks they wanted.
They had the commitment both times. Divine Storm just to make sure they got the first kill. Mosh Pit just to make sure they get the second. And they get so much out of this Dread. They've caught up in experience. They have time now where B-Step don't have Tyrael, that they're keeping command of both of the temples in this phase for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and this is going to be B-Step, you know, just accepting their fate for now. They have, once in 8 seconds, there's going to be no shots left up on the map. They're now down structurally. It's just, it's going to come down to the boss, isn't it? Because
it always does.
Those boss moments aren't forced on Sky unless, they aren't even forced ever, but they're more reasonable to take on whenever you're, you know, struggling in the structure department, when you're significantly down. And now I just feel like the fact that B-Step's setting an even footing, these teams are the ones, Freedom's the #1, that whenever things get ugly, they go, screw it, we're going to boss. And so I just feel like now they're going to, if B-Step somehow converts the game back into their favor, they go, all right, let's do it. We're ready, start it up, get the tornado running.
They're getting a setup before that here in the bottom lane with their stealing away the Giants from B-Step. They will get that. B-Step not feeling contesting there in time. They did have their heroic abilities, so just not wanting to waste it all. They've already been caught out once and gave up whatever lead they had in this game.
You can see it. Everybody knows. Eventually it's going to be a problem. It's got 1 minute to spawn, and we've got the dance starting. As the Giants are now the focus here for these teams. Give me a moment here. I'm going to take a deeper dive into these HPs.
All right, Giants picked up. B-Step trying to make sure that they can keep up with the soak-in that Team Freedom's been doing too. And they do have Dahaka in the bottom lane, whereas Falstad's been chilling in top.
So for Freedom, top and mid are both a keep at this point in the game, whereas only for B-Step, only top altar would be a keep. So that's a huge selling point for Freedom, the fact that they get to choose, only if I guess both the shrines spawn. So it's a double keep. This is a dead even shrine for both these teams. It's very impactful in the fact that it gets the keep.
It's really cool to see that type of aggression from Team Freedom, just seeing if they could catch anybody. At this point, we've talked about this newer team, members who are newer to the professional scene of NA Heroes of the Storm, still being willing to go out and press into the battleground side so confidently versus B-Step. But a lot of that, of course, has to do with the fact that they won the last game. The Temple has started. McIntyre and Zugrug both here, but all the teams starting to set up. Dahaka still in the bottom, trying to get the soaking edge over Team Freedom.
It's never going to happen, though. I just don't think it's going to. They end up burrowing. So Dahaka's going to join. iDream getting caught out by that Hammer of Justice, the first kill. Uther is down. K1 Pro doing work onto the backline. There we see Adaptation getting a bit of value, but it's 5 versus 1. 2 members now down. The rest of these shots going over to Freedom. The bigger question is, did they deny enough shots to not lose a keep? And I don't think they did.
And B-Step's in a very rough spot. There is Void Prison. Zugrug starting to come in, as is the flight from Nasmus. Gusts, McIntyre, and King Caffeine in. Divine Storm spells the end of Malfurion. Team Freedom would love to get more, but even not getting that, they have 20, they have time, there's a boss and a temple.
25 seconds here before we have Medivh back. He is something to consider when looking at the boss, especially if 20 comes online. Just the fact that you have Polybomb. 14 seconds, I don't think he's going to make it at all. I thought B-Step was going to send over Greymane and Tyrael, try and stall it out, wait for the Medivh to come back, but no, sir. Boss pushing out, the shots on top get a keep, and 20 advantage. What does Freedom want to do? Do they push with the boss, or do they rotate to the shots?
ETC is holding on to his heroic. So is Falstad. Ends up with Epic Mount. Guardian of Tears Fall is going to help with B-Step. The fact that they can take out minions, because it's so unlikely now that B-Step does not lose a keep in this instance.
So Falstad's showing top, and that should force B-Step once they get their Malfurion to all in. Falstad should not be showing top right now off of these shots. Oh, B-Step. That was the best fight they're going to get, and they didn't take it.
Falstad's flying in too. Dahaka is now in trouble because Zeratol's found him. It's 2, and the rest of Freedom making these rotations again to get picks in the late game. They have B-Step's number.
They do, and a lot of it comes down to, you know, just that macro attempt after the one-loss team fight, but the late game macro attempt that Cawthon was pointing out a bit earlier. When B-Step moves in that direction, it just doesn't. It does not play out for them nearly as well. And again, with the Greymane and the Sanctification composition, we're yet to see a Sanctification dropped that went on top of the Greymane for the dive onto the backline. Just what the composition's made to do, it's yet to show any signs of being able to produce that kind of result.
Team Freedom showing how good they are, how fast they are at catching members of B-Step out when they're trying to soak. Even somebody as tanky as Dahaka, they've been able to get multiple picks on. Now there's only 1 keep left for B-Step. It is quite low in health too. And that puts B-Step back in the situation where they have to try to win a team fight.
They have to try and win the late game team fight. You know, playoffs had a lot of hype behind B-Step so far, and this is only the 3rd game, and it's definitely not going to be their last, but Game 1 looks like a different form. Game 2 looked a little bit of what we're more used to, and here in Game 3, it doesn't feel like it's the same B-Step, but there's still obviously that kind of, there's a problem somewhere in it. You know, it seems less focused now on early game, but more about what happens in the mid to late game. We don't see them try and force any advantages. Again, they're relying on that late game team fight. So even if they get an advantage, if they get any form of a lead, it doesn't really matter because they aren't grouping to take those team fights with those advantages very well.
Yeah, and if they end up losing this game, we may see an adjustment off of that. Something like, maybe shrines as a possibility so that they can just try to make sure that they have lots of time to fight. This is a double temple phase, so this is a rough point, again, for B-Step. The best they can do right now is get that team fight. Bolt, chosen by Zugrug to get out.
But Falstead's getting the shots on bottom. Those won't be game, but it's pretty close. It will get a lot of damage onto the core. And he's got the global, so B-Step and the rest of B-Step and King Caffeine have to force with that holy ground. They need to. Dahaka's going to match the Falstad.
Zeratil's just going to core.
Yeah, they're going to just look to end it because Zeratil can just void after getting the damage. The shielding's going to be taken away. All right, so the race is on, 80% and counting. The mosh pit. Sanctification is going to stop it. Shots on bottom were delayed, 65. Zeratil's just going ham on that core, and he's yet to drop the void.
50% and falling. B-Step's 8 p.m. using Twilight Dream just to kill Zugrug. Polybomb's out. McIntyre's in trouble. And still, Insomnia on the core. Team Freedom now one game away from taking out B-Step in the playoffs.
Team Freedom, man. Staying in it. Keeping their heads up. I did think that, you know, with the big names and the right circumstances with the pressure, that maybe that first game of B-Step will get to them, but not the case. They have a lead now, 2-1.
Well, things looked good for B-Step earlier on, Cawthon, so what happened? Where was the turning point?
I was really liking the way B-Step was playing. First 12, 13 levels, they forced things. They had that one engage on the bottom where the Dahaka came in, and they just hard engaged and wiped them. And I was like, it's classic B-Step. They're back to their style. And then the game went late, and they started playing more and more passive. I'm like, so both teams are 18, right? You look at the level 20 power spikes, you have to think they're in Team Freedom's favor. Rewind on Zeratul, insane. Any way that Falstad goes at 20 is a huge power spike.
Yeah.
And they just don't want to do anything. They're just happy to like coast slightly behind, let the other team get to 20. I kept waiting for that big engage, and it was just them passively looking to soak to 20, just getting picked off the rest of the game. I just never saw that aggression forcing the team fight that you know B-Step has to do to win.
Yeah.
They're not going to win by playing passively.
B-Step now will get the opportunity once again to choose either first pick or battleground choice. So Dread, knowing now everything that we know, where B-Step's thriving, continuing to thrive on Dragonshire, they're probably going to pick the battleground. Where do you think they're going to take us?
Tomb of the
Or
Spider
should
Queen.
take us?
That's what I want. I want Tomb. It's the closest thing to Dragonshire, and